Hey guys, today I'll show you a horror thriller film named The Elixir. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. The movie begins with the village chief hosting a large banquet in his courtyard to celebrate the annual coming-of-age ceremony. Police officer Jack, on a break from his patrol, sneaks into the back kitchen. He pulls out a diamond ring, ready to propose to his girlfriend, Lady Bro. But before he can say a word, a call comes in from the police chief. They've just seized a shipment of illegal fireworks, and the chief tells Jack to come over immediately. Jack has no choice but to stuff the ring back into his pocket, apologize to Lady Bro, and rush away from the party. However, just as Jack leaves, a car plows into the crowd, only coming to a screeching halt when it crashes into a pickup truck. The village chief helps an injured villager up, then furiously runs to confront the driver. But when he opens the car door, he finds the driver trembling uncontrollably. Before he can figure out what's happening, he's violently thrown into a field. Witnessing the village chief being bitten to death, the surrounding villagers are completely horrified. Let's rewind the clock 5 hours earlier to check out what is going on. A pharmaceutical company on the brink of collapse has finally developed a new drug after 3 months of work. Before sending it for approval, the head of R&D prepares 2 samples for his boss and a major client. The company's boss, who looks to be nearly 60, is married to a beautiful young woman named Karina and clearly looks worn out. When the new drug sample arrives, he swallows it without a second thought. Just then, a commotion is heard outside. It's his daughter and her family arriving. His wife, Karina, hurries out to greet them, but his daughter, Sandy, clearly doesn't care for her young stepmother. Meanwhile, the boss has just finished a shower. Looking in the mirror, he's stunned into silence. The wrinkles on his forehead and his full head of white hair have all vanished. He looks decades younger. He eagerly finds his young wife, excitedly telling her that this is the new anti-aging drug their company has developed. However, his daughter, Sandy, is still scheming with her husband on how to sell the company. They've even made a promotional video and are discussing how to split the money with her brother, Sadiman. Unfortunately, Sadiman, a typical rich kid, does nothing but stay home and play shooting games, showing no interest in the family business. When the rejuvenated boss walks into the living room, everyone is stunned. Some assume he just dyed his hair. Contrary to his previous stance, he announces without explaining that he's canceling the plan to sell the company. He explains the reason is this newly developed anti-aging drug. This infuriates Sandy. She had planned to take the money, divorce her husband, and start her own business with her son. She's grown to hate her life, her cheating husband, and her former best friend who married her father. With both sides seeing the other with contempt, the scene quickly descends into chaos. Growing increasingly agitated, the veins on boss's neck begin to bulge. He shouts at everyone to stop arguing and begins listing their faults. Perhaps due to the intense emotion, the veins on his face become more pronounced, and he starts to uncontrollably spray blood from his mouth. Moments later, he collapses, unconscious. His son-in-law, Rudy, rushes over and finds that his father-in-law's heart has stopped. As everyone scrambles to call for an ambulance, the boss suddenly sits up. His eyes have turned a milky white, and a low growl rumbles from his throat. Seeing the butler approach, he instinctively lunges. The burly driver runs over to help, but is also tackled by the mutated boss. Though not bitten, the driver's face is splattered with the boss's blood. Sadiman rushes in to pull his father off but stumbles and falls. Just as he's about to be bitten, he grabs a nearby replica bow and arrow and without hesitation pulls the trigger. The arrow hits the boss in the head and he falls to the ground, motionless. The family stands frozen, sobbing quietly. Only the son-in-law remains level-headed. He tells the driver to hurry to the police station for help. The entire estate is now in complete turmoil. Sadiman sits in a car filled with self-blame, believing he killed his father. Meanwhile, the bitten butler is still bleeding from his neck. As the others discuss how to get him to a hospital, the butler suddenly stands up. His behavior is identical to the boss's. He attacks any living person he sees. A maid who tries to intervene tragically becomes his next victim and loses her virginity on the spot. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Rudy grabs his son and flees outside. In the car, Sandy is comforting her brother when she notices something wrong in the courtyard. A maid is viciously attacking the gardener. As Sandy moves to investigate, she's confronted by a terrifying, contorted face. Thankfully, Sadiman starts the car just in time, running over the mutated maid. Before Sandy can process the horror, she rushes back into the main hall to find her husband and son gone. The floor is covered in bloodstains, and no one is answering her calls. Suddenly, another infected maid emerges from a bedroom. Sandy and Sadiman sprint outside. Reaching the car, they see that the maid they ran over is gone. As they wonder where she went, they spot her dragging her mangled body, crawling rapidly toward them. Sadaman kicks her away. The place is just too bizarre. They have to escape. Meanwhile, the driver, who was heading to the police station, begins to feel the effects of the virus as the blood on his face seeps into his system. At that moment, he happens to be passing the village chief's house, and his car uncontrollably crashes into the party. By the time the village chief opens the car door, the driver has fully turned. After savagely biting the chief, he charges into the crowd, and the banquet quickly dissolves into chaos. Back at the estate, Rudy and the others are still trying to escape the infected butler. They play a game of cat and mouse around a pickup truck. Just as they're about to trick him, Rudy's phone rings. The infected butler lunges, and the group barely manages to protect the little boy. As they reach a stalemate, a heavy rain suddenly begins to fall. For some unknown reason, the infected butler freezes in place, completely motionless. The group, feeling incredibly lucky, quickly flees. Rudy hastily answers his phone. It was his wife, Sandy. Relieved to hear her son is alive, Sandy agrees to meet at the nearest landmark, the village chief's house, since pinpointing their location in the wilderness is difficult. But when Rudy's group arrives first, they discover that everyone at the banquet has turned into the infected. They immediately decide to turn back. A woman lagging behind is ambushed and bitten by a zombie. The commotion attracts more of the infected, cutting off their escape. They have no choice but to hide inside the village chief's house. Luckily, the infected are all busy feasting in the courtyard, so the house seems safe. Rudy carefully locks the door, only to receive a call from his wife. She and Sadaman have also reached the area. Seeing the courtyard swarming with the infected, Sandy is desperate to reunite with her son. She tells Rudy to follow the sound of her car horn to find her. However, the infected are extremely sensitive to sound. The horn acts like blood in the water for sharks. Her brother is forced to start the car and speed away into the village, with a horde of the infected in hot pursuit, leaving a trail of unfortunate villagers in their wake. This, however, reduces the pressure on Rudy's group at the chief's house. They rush out into the courtyard and spot the car their driver had used, but its front is too damaged to be drivable. As Rudy tries to call his wife for help, an infected person lunges from a field. The group makes a run for the village entrance and comes across a small wooden cabin. Karina quickly takes her grandson inside, while Rudy bravely stays behind to hold off the attacker. The two anxiously watch the door. After a short while, Rudy returns, covered in blood. He managed to kill the zombie, but his arm was bitten in the process. Sensing his time is short, Rudy kneels and tells his son that if he's gone, he must protect his mother. After saying this, Rudy stands up. When he turns back, he is completely transformed. Karina uses all her strength to protect her grandson, finally managing to use the door to slam the zombified Rudy onto an iron pole. The grandmother and grandson have survived for now. However, Sandy and Sadaman face a new crisis. Intent on reaching her son, Sandy has Sadaman take a detour towards the village chief's house. He doesn't see a truck up ahead, and with no time to swerve, their car flips onto its side. The terrified truck driver gets out to check on them. Sandy and her brother are thankfully unharmed. But this delay allows the horde of the infected to catch up. The poor villagers on the truck, who are on their way to the chief's party, become food for the zombies instead. The truck driver stands frozen in shock and is swarmed in an instant. Sandy is pale with fear, but luckily the police station is just ahead. Inside the station, a few officers are discussing what to do with the confiscated fireworks. Sadaman and Sandy burst in, gasping for air. They immediately lock the door and explain that a massive horde of the infected is outside. The police chief scoffs and decides to take his men to investigate, leaving only Officer Jack to look after the siblings. But when the officers arrive at the crash site, they are met by a foe far more ferocious than they are. Several officers are killed on the spot, with only the mustached police chief managing to fire off a few shots. Meanwhile, Karina and her grandson, hiding in the cabin, hear footsteps outside. To their relief, it's not the infected but Lady Bro, who escaped the village chief's party. It turns out the cabin is her home. Lady Bro immediately calls her boyfriend, Jack, but before she can explain, he hangs up. The police chief has managed to escape the horde and make it back to the station. They quickly let him in and struggle to hold the door against the onslaught. Only then do they notice the chief has been bitten. Sandy guesses he will turn soon, but Jack ignores her smelly bullshit and tries to call for medical help. In the next moment, the police chief struggles to his feet. Sadaman, seeing the danger, quickly draws an officer's gun. Unfortunately, his shot doesn't hit the head, only wounding the chief. In the chaos, Jack is nearly bitten. Now finally understanding the horror of the situation, he manages to work together to lock the infected chief in a holding cell. By now, the police station is surrounded by the infected. The gamer, Sadimin, is surprisingly the most rational one. He tells Jack to call for backup immediately. Sandy, worried about her son, is overcome with emotion when she learns he is safe at Lady Bro's house. In contrast, upon hearing that her husband has turned, she barely reacts, only frowning slightly. Sadimin grabs the phone and instructs his nephew to stay inside and not go anywhere until rescue arrives, promising they will come for them. The infected chief's constant roaring from the cell attracts more of the infected. Jack can only brace himself against the door. Suddenly, the station's radio crackles to life. It's the rescue team, but their hopes are shattered when they hear screams over the radio, followed by silence. The rescue team was wiped out before even entering the village. Jack and the other two are devastated. They climb to the attic and look out. The entire area is swarming with the infected. Sandy has no choice but to relay the bad news to Karina. At this point, she sets aside their old grievances and begs Karina to take care of her son for her. Back in the station, the trio is trying to figure out a way to escape. They recall that the infected are highly sensitive to sound. This gives Jack an idea: the confiscated fireworks. He tentatively lights a bottle rocket. As expected, the sound draws all the infected away. There are several motorcycles parked nearby. They could ride them to Lady Bro's house. The three of them quickly arm themselves from the weapons locker. Sadimin, an avid gamer, is familiar with firearms. Grabbing the fireworks, they sneak into the main hall, crack open the door, and Jack sets off more fireworks. The bright flashes and loud bangs successfully lure the infected away. The trio, armed, charges out of the police station, but they run into a straggler. Jack instinctively fires his gun, but the loud gunshot draws the horde right back to them. It's too late to run. They can only huddle behind riot shields. Jack and Sadimin quickly run out of ammunition as more and more infected close in. Just as they're about to be overwhelmed, a clap of thunder echoes through the sky. All the infected look up as a torrential downpour begins. Once again, they all freeze in place, motionless. Puzzled, the three cautiously step forward. Nearby, Karina and the others are startled by a loud crash. The zombified Rudy has broken free from the iron pole. The noise also attracts the surrounding infected, but the sudden rain seems to freeze time. Karina realizes this is their best chance to escape. However, just as they start their motorcycle, the zombified Rudy smashes through the door. The three scream, slamming the throttle and managing to speed out of the cabin just before he can catch them. Meanwhile, Sandy and the others are still navigating through the frozen horde, but the rain stops as quickly as it began. Jack and Sadimin are instantly swarmed. Relying on their body armor, they tell Sandy to get to a vehicle while they create a diversion. Seeing Sandy has made it to safety, they have no choice but to retreat back into the police station. Sandy runs fast like a Tesla bike, jumping into the Tesla truck just as the infected close in, but she quickly realizes a problem. She doesn't know how to drive. After several failed attempts to start the vehicle, she spots her son and two others approaching on an electric scooter. Sandy frantically honks the horn to warn them, but the infected charge toward them regardless. In a moment of desperation, Sandy lights the fireworks, successfully drawing the horde away. After a day of running, Sandy is finally reunited with her son. But before they can even speak, more infected begin to gather. They all pile into the truck's cab. Luckily, Karina is no novice. She expertly starts the truck and floors it, plowing through the horde. As they near the police station, however, she makes a tragic discovery. The brakes have failed. The truck smashes straight into the police station. Sandy and the others are unhurt, but Sadimin inside wasn't able to get out of the way in time, and his leg is pinned under a wheel. Karina tries to reverse the truck, but a flood of infected begins pouring through the massive hole in the wall. Jack opens fire, but they keep coming. Fortunately, Karina spots that the station's back door is clear and yells for everyone to escape that way. Jack covers their retreat with his girlfriend, but in the chaos, he forgets about the infected chief still in the cell. The chief manages to bite Lady Bro's arm. Overcome with grief, Jack keeps pulling the trigger until he too is tackled to the ground by the infected. In his final moments, a strange calm comes over him. He calmly reaches into his pocket and pulls out the ring he never got to give her. He and Lady Bro share a final smile before dying to meet Jesus. Sadimin has also run out of bullets. As the horde swarms in, he screams for his sister to leave. When she refuses, Sadimin lights a firework, knowing the nearby truck is leaking fuel. Sandy has no choice but to flee the station with her son. The moment the zombies swarm him, Sadaman decisively throws the lit firework. A massive explosion lights up the night sky, filled with the sparks of countless other fireworks, instantly engulfing the surrounding infected. Karina, Sandy, and her son manage to escape. They find a working motorcycle by the road, but Sandy's face is filled with sorrow. She reveals that she was bitten during the struggle. Knowing her fate is sealed, she gives her son a tearful goodbye. Just then, more infected emerge from the fire. She yells at Karina to run and lights her last firework. She uses the same trick to lure the infected away, but this time, she is the bait. By dawn, Karina has escaped the village with her grandson. But what they don't know is that the mutated butler is also walking out of the village. And in a bustling metropolis, the major client who was supposed to acquire the pharmaceutical company wonders why he can't reach the boss. On his desk sits an empty sample bottle of the anti-aging drug. It seems the story of the zombie virus is far from over.
This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.